on good clinical practice. Up till now, we have already shared video link as well as the PPT to all our participants of the previous session. Today, we are having two sessions. Before the start of the session, I request our national coordinator, Dr. C.M. Kamal sir, to address the gathering.
I am audible, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good afternoon to all and greetings from the National Association of Pharmacology and Therapeutics. It is indeed a pleasure with all of you to have on this last session of good clinical practice our signature event online. It is very much successful across the country, and we are really thankful to all the supporters who have supported us for this fourth National GCP Workshop. And our in the guidance of our president, national president, Dr. R.K. Dixit, and the general secretary, Dr. Ganesh Dhakle sir, who is also the organizing secretary of this GCP workshop. I convey all the best wishes to all the participants, and we have already started working on the certificates. Please have patience. One by one, we will be sending the certificates of all those who have completed the workshop. Best wishes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal sir, for your valuable words for the workshop. Now I request our Honorable President of NPD, Dr. R.K. Dixit sir, to release the brochure of our next annual conference, NAPTICON 2025, to be held in the Coimbatore. Over to Dr. R.K. Dixit sir.
So good afternoon, everyone. And this was a great journey regarding the academic achievement throughout these weeks. Everybody learned about GCP and got enriched with the GCP. Now the second phase of the academic feast is going to occur in the Coimbatore. And this Coimbatore is a place where divine power and everything is there, along with the science. So I welcome you all to be at Coimbatore with the maximum strength and make this a grand success and celebrate the success of academic feast along with us. So now I say to release the brochure of this conference, NAPTICON 2025.
Dr. Bhuneshwari madam, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Respected President, sir, General Secretary, sir, and our association, National Coordinator, Dr. Kamal, sir. Very good evening to all. And it's my thank you for the permission to participate in this event to release the brochure of NAPTICON 2025 Coimbatore Conference. And as a result, and all the resource persons and all the moderator and the participants, I thank for your presence also during this pleasant moment. As a conference secretary, NAPTICON 2025, which is scheduled in the year, this is the centennial year of our PhD management, and we are conducting this conference at PhD Institute of Medical Science and Research, Coimbatore. This conference theme is crafting clinical excellence with pharmacology and therapeutics. In this regard, as a pre-conference workshop, we also scheduled 3 events on November 27th between 9 to 5 p.m. Workshop 1, that is clinical pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamic modeling and a simulation in phase 1 clinical trial. Workshop 2 is the simulation way of learning pharmacotherapeutics. And workshop 3 is the drug analysis, that is with reference to LCMS and the AAS in drug investigations. During this conference, definitely, I will assure that all the delegates definitely will be benefited with many plenary sessions, association awards, PG quiz, young pharmacologist, what is the platform for them to present their scientific content. And there is a platform for everyone to present their research, either on oral or poster presentation. In this year, apart from the national awards from our national association for all the pharmacologists, start from the senior residents, assistant professor, associates, and on different categories of the clinical research, experimental pharmacology, pharmacovigilance, and bioethics and pharmacogenomics. From our institution, from the organizing team, we have included a very special award that is in the name of Dr. S. Ramalingam Memorial Gold Medal Award, including the cash prize 10,000 for the candidate who is securing very high recognition in the oral competitive presentation under the title Pharmacogenomics or Bioethics. And I would like to inform all the participants of this GCP evening that we are closing with the early bird registration this March 31st. And this brochure, you can also see the details of Coimbatore, what are the places to see around Coimbatore, and registration source and WhatsApp number. Once you registered successfully, you'll be added with one conference group WhatsApp number. And as a secretary for this forthcoming national conference 2025 November at Coimbatore, I assure definitely all delegates will enjoy conference events, including Coimbatore food, culture and weather, and many areas to visit in and around Coimbatore. Thank you for your presence at this and during this brochure releasing moment. And our organizing team is ready to help you to receive you at Coimbatore, a city next level to Chennai in Tamil Nadu, known for pleasant weather, food, medical tourism, education, and industries. I thank you very much for all the delegates and all the participants of the GCP, the moderators, and also the resource persons. And very importantly, I thank our President Sir to give this valuable introduction for the brochure release. I thank our General Secretary and our National Coordinator for their extreme support to form and release this brochure. Thank you very much. I expect you all at Coimbatore for making this conference very grand during the November 25 event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dikshit sir, for releasing the brochure of the conference, as well as Dr. Bhuvneshwari madam for giving the details of the conference to be held at the Coimbatore in the month of November. Now we will go ahead with today's workshop. Is my PPT visible, sir?
Yes, sir.
So for today's first topic is on serious adverse events and compensation guidelines as per the NDCT 2019 rule, which will be taken by Dr. Ashok Shinoy, sir. And the second session is on silent features of NDCT 2019, excluding SCE. That session will be taken by Dr. Renuka Munshi, madam. First session will be moderated by Dr. Jayanti, madam. Madam is presently working as professor at Jipmer Pondicherry. Madam is having 18 years of experience in teaching and research and guided more than 20 MBBS, MD as well as PhD students. Madam is also former HOD of Pharmacology and member secretary of the Ethics Committee for International Studies at JIPMER and chairperson of the Ethics Committee at PIMS College of Nursing, Pondicherry. Madam has also published more than 60 research papers in national as well as international index journal, and she is also member of NPT, IPS, ISRPT as well as FERSI. I welcome you, madam, for the session. The second session will be moderated by Dr. Yogendra Keche, sir. Sir is presently working as professor in the Department of Pharmacology at AIIMS Raipur and looking after in hospital stores as a faculty in charge of the hospital store. Sir is having more than 18 years of teaching as well as clinical research experience, and he has worked as member secretary and member of IEC at AIIMS Raipur. Sir has published more than 34 research papers in national and international journal, and sir is also speaker at GCP training, research methodology as well as pharmacovigilance workshops. Sir is also a member of IPS, NPT, ISRPT, SOPI as well as Indian Academy of Geriatrics. I also welcome you to Dr. Keche sir for this workshop as a moderator. Now I request Dr. Jayanti madam to introduce first speaker, Dr. Ashok Shinoy, sir. Over to Dr. Jayanti, madam. First session will be of 20 minutes, followed by 10 minutes to the question and answer session. Over to Jayanti, madam.
Thank you very much, sir, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure to be part of this GCP workshop. I thank the organizers of this GCP workshop as well as the administrators of National Association of Pharmacology and Therapeutics for giving me this opportunity and to be part of this workshop. Today's topic is on SAE reporting, that is Serious Adverse Event Reporting and Compensation Guidelines in India based on NDCT Rules 2019, which is going to be given by none other than Dr. Ashok Shenoy, who has vast experience in clinical trials. Dr. Ashok Shenoy is a professor of pharmacology at KMC Mangalore, unit of Mahe, Manipal, member of Mahe Ethics Committee, Manipal, and chairman Central Ethics Committee, deemed to be University, Mangalore, member of FARSI and Academic Consortium for Clinical Research in India, ISCR. Sir is recipient of Good Teacher Award 4 times from KMC Mangalore, a co-PI in 80 global clinical trials, participated as PI in 15 bioequivalent studies. He is also a certified trainer of GCP by CDSA, THSTI, and has published over 60 research articles. So I welcome you, sir, for giving this talk on SAE and compensation guidelines. Over to you, sir, Dr. Ashok Shenoy.
The slide is visible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I want to thank the office bearers of NPT, especially Dakle sir and Kamal sir, for giving me an opportunity to interact with all of you. The topic given to me today is serious adverse events and compensation guidelines in India. Disclaimer. Compensation guidelines are contained in New Drugs and Clinical Trial Rules 2019, which was published on 19th March 2019. It has undergone many amendments, which will be delivered by Dr. Munshi the next to this. I will concentrate on serious adverse events, SAE, and compensation guidelines. Please distinguish between severe and serious. Severe and serious are not synonymous. Severity refers to the intensity of an adverse event. A serious adverse event goes by a certain definition. A severe adverse event is intense, but not necessarily serious. Serious adverse event, or SAE, is an untoward medical occurrence during a clinical trial, resulting in these 5 clauses as per NDCT 2019. First one, death. Hospitalization if the patient is outpatient. Prolongation of the hospitalization if the trial is on inpatients. Persistent or significant disability or incapacity. Congenital anomaly or birth defect, or life-threatening event. If an event satisfies one of these 5 criteria, then you call it an SAE or serious adverse event. And compensation has to be given in case a person meets with this SAE, and the compensation guidelines are based on whether the patient died or hospitalized or suffered from disability or congenital anomaly or has a life-threatening event. I'll give you examples to explain how to arrive whether SAE or no, and even causality. I enrolled into a clinical trial, and after a week, I developed headache. It was so intense, I could not even get up from the bed. I didn't get up till noon, where I got up and later had some liquids. Evening also, I could not have any solids. I could not even sleep at night. I could not go for work. The next day also, I got up, I took bath, and I had some snacks, but I could not go for work. Day 3, I was all right. I was fine. I went for work, but these 2 days were hell for me. So is it essay? Of course, interaction, there's no time for interaction. I wish interaction was possible. I'll give answer after few scenarios. I had to travel from Bangalore to Mangalore, and I'm a trial patient. I was rushing as I was late, and the Bangalore T2 terminal is a newly made terminal. I never realized there is a glass separation in between, and I was heading, I hit the glass. I had a blackout. I I didn't become unconscious, but definitely I had a giddiness, and I sat there for 2-3 minutes, but it was getting late. I headed towards the gate. Then I boarded the flight. By the time I reached Mangalore, I had a swelling on my head. I thought it's wise to call my doctor and tell him that this happened. And he tells me, you had a blackout. It is better that I observe you. Please come to the hospital. And after 24 hours, you can go. I go to the hospital. I'm kept for observation. I'm enjoying. Friends are coming and seeing me. I'm watching a movie. I'm eating nice food. And after 24 hours, nothing happened. And I go out. Third scenario is a female participant becomes pregnant during clinical trial. Next scenario, a patient has enrolled himself for ulcerative colitis trial. The site is Mangalore, and the patient is from Kerala. He is around 3 hours journey from his place to Mangalore, and colonoscopy has to be done. Patient has to arrive at the center at 6 o'clock, but the patient says it is very difficult for him. He has to catch the train at around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So he asked permission to come the previous day and gets admitted. I say, I'm the investigator. I said, okay, no problem. The patient comes previous day. Then he gets admitted in the afternoon. The patient is hospitalized. Then in the morning, colonoscopy is done. Evening, I feel the patient is fit for discharge. I discharge him at around 5 o'clock. Then the patient catches a train and goes back to his place. Is this serious adverse event? The patient enrolled in a clinical trial. He comes for routine laboratory testing. Potassium is 6.5. He has, I won't say he has no symptoms, but definitely he has some symptoms which he cannot explain. I give him anti-hyperkalemic measures. And again, I ask him to come after 1 week. The potassium is 5.5. It has come down. So as per textbooks, potassium above 6, it can cause arrhythmias and it can be dangerous. It can be life-threatening. So is this an essay? Each case, each essays that we come across, it has to have a lot of discussion because we have to have an in-depth knowledge of what exactly constitutes a serious adverse event. This headache, I suffered, yes, 2 days, I could not go for work, I was on the bed, but it didn't lead to any significant disability. Significant disability means loss of limbs or loss of special senses like eyesight, hearing capacity. So this is not an essay. Hit on the head at the airport, yes. I was hospitalized for an observation. There was an event which was significant. Hence, this is an essay. Female participant becoming pregnant, that is not an essay. It is just an event. Some companies call it just pregnancy or event of special interest. If there is some congenital anomaly on ultrasonography, or if the child is born with some congenital anomaly, then only it becomes serious adverse event. This patient admitted with colonoscopy, this is not an essay because this is a social admission. Patient was admitted because he had to travel. There was an inconvenience. Social admissions, it has to be documented, and this is not an essay. Hyperkalemia, this is not an essay because the life should be really at danger at the time of the laboratory value that event. For example, the patient should have had arrhythmia, or let us say blood sugar. The patient blood sugar is some 50 or something like that. We cannot say if it was 30, he would have been some unconscious and even he would have died. If the potassium was 7 or something like that, then he would have died. We cannot extrapolate and say if and thereby conclude that it is SAE or something like that. Life should be at risk at that point of time. So I hope you got the glimpse of how to come across or how to assess serious adverse event. Now let us move on to the compensation for research related death or injury. Gone are those days wherein when the patient used to die either in clinical trials or even in under the healthcare, where the patient party used to say what to do, this time came and he went. Now compensation for trial related death and injury is now required. It is mandatory. And this financial compensation shall be in addition to any expenses on medical management of the trial subject, till the causality is established as not related. So the primary thing here is establishment of causality. Till the causality is established, the company has to pay for the SAE. If the causality is established as related, company has to continue paying. If the causality is established as not related, afterwards, it is the patient's responsibility to look after the SAE. There are three types of payment in clinical trials. One is payment for participation. I know the term looks a little crude, payment for participation. It's not like you participate in my study, I will pay you or something like that. For example, type 2 diabetes. He would have come to you once in a year or maximum once in 6 months. Because of the trial, he has to come to you every month. Why he should apply leave for your purpose and come, and why he should spend on transport. Clinical trial assessment take a bit longer time, so he will have to have a meal in the hospital. Why he should spend on the meal? So missed wages, transport, and meals. These has to be reimbursed to the patient. This is called payment for participation. Next, whenever there is an SAE, that SAE has to be treated. This is called free medical management. This is not compensation. Dear participants, please note, you treat an SAE free of cost. That does not amount to compensation. This is free medical management. Now, over and above this, compensation has to be paid. Just think about implication of compensation in academic studies with new drugs. It may be PG thesis or it may be PhD dissertation. What if there is trial-related injury or research-related injury? We have seen this. We have studied this even in MBBS. These are the causality categories as per WHO UMC. And Naranjo scale is more objective, and it has a series of specific questions, and we assign a score to each answer, and we categorize based on this. I want to ask you something. Suppose the compensation arrived is at 10 lakhs. If it is certain 10 lakhs, if it is probable 8 lakhs, if it is possible 6 lakhs, is it like that? No, it cannot be that way. Compensation is an all or none phenomenon. If you're giving, give full. If you're not giving, nothing. Hence, in clinical trials, the compensation has to be given if it is related. Compensation need not be given if it is not related. Hence, the causality is only two, related and not related. Based on the investigator's brochure, based on consultations with the PI and other members of the team, we have to come to a conclusion whether it is related or not related. Investigator's brochure is the document that helps you the maximum. Under the chapter 6, under the rule number 39 to 43, it deals with the compensation, and the 7th schedule, it tells about the formula to determine the quantum of compensation in cases of clinical trial related injury or death. Compensation for research related injury is determined by DCGI based on recommendation from an expert committee instead of decisions from ethics committee. Not that the DCGI doesn't trust ethics committee or something like that. Probably few ethics committees are quite raw in this. Hence, expert committee decision is final. Finalized inclusion of helpful compensation formulae that has been developed by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare based on factors like age of the subject, etc. This introduces clarity and defines the limit of financial liability. Who will receive the compensation? In case of death, the patient is no more, the participant is no more. Hence, the legal heir, the nominee mentioned in the informed consent document, he will get the compensation. In case of permanent disability or injury, the trial participant is still alive, so he will get himself. This shall be in addition to any expenses incurred on medical management, over and above free medical management. In the event of injury not being permanent, the quantum of compensation shall commensurate with the loss of wages of the subject. You should be aware of rule number 41, because if you are reporting SAA to the regulator, that is DCGI, under Sugam portal, this drop-down menu will appear. These 7 clauses, there is no discussion on causality. Causality assessment is considered related if it meets one of these criteria. That was very small, so let me elaborate that. The first one, known adverse event of the IP. If it's a known adverse event of the IP, then definitely the compensation has to be given. There is no discussion. If there is violation of the approved protocol or scientific misconduct or negligence by sponsor or investigator leading to SAE, then the relatedness is automatically yes. But if there is violation of the protocol or negligence by the participant, probably that has to be discussed. That does not necessarily contribute to relatedness. Failure of the IP to provide intended therapeutic effect, where the required standard of care or the rescue medication, though available, was not provided to the subject. I'll give an example in the next slide. Not providing the required standard of care, though available to the subject as per the protocol in placebo-controlled trial. Adverse events due to concomitant medication excluding standard of care necessitated as a part of the approved protocol. Adverse events on a child in utero because of the participation of the mother or even the father. The partner pregnancy is also important here. Any procedures involved in the clinical trial leading to SAE. Okay, I'll give you examples and try to explain. There is a trial which is ongoing for the previous NASH. Now the current terminology is NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. The patient has consented. IP is not started yet. Liver biopsy is mandatory. If it is not done in the past 6 months, the sponsor insists on liver biopsy. And during liver biopsy, the patient dies. IP is not started. What is the relatedness? Compensation has to be given or not to be given. A patient who is enrolled in a trial, he is driving a bike. A car comes from the wrong side, hits the patient, and the patient falls down, develops fracture, gets admitted, and gets disabled for the next 3 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. Is it an SAE? Is it related? Compensation has to be given, yes or no? Clinical trial in asthmatic patients, the IP didn't provide adequate response. The patient, the participant worsens. Let us say for understanding purpose, rescue medications were not given. The patient is hospitalized, worsens, develops cyanosis. Then he has to be resuscitated and treated. Is it related? Compensation has to be given, yes or no? As per the protocol, IP has to be stored between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And at the time of administration of the drug, the temperature was 35. Summer, it was 35. And injection was given intramuscularly. And the patient develops anaphylaxis. Compensation has to be given, yes or no? Depression patients in a clinical trial with a major depressive disorder, the patient gets assigned to placebo arm and worsens during the trial and hypothetically, let us say, commit suicide. I mean, it doesn't happen that easily. Psychiatrists, they evaluate the patient and they take care of the patient. For understanding purposes, let us say the patients commit suicide. Now, compensation has to be given, yes or no? Let us say a clinical trial in inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis is going on. IP is a biological and corticosteroids, let us say, let us assume that this is not the standard of care. Actually, it is, but for understanding purpose, let us say corticosteroids are not standard of care, but that protocol demands that the background corticosteroids should go on. So corticosteroids are going on in the background. On long term, the patient develops osteoporosis, has a fracture, gets admitted into the hospital, SAE. It is not because of IP, it is because of concomitant administered drug. Is it related? Compensation has to be given, yes or no? So here, the first case, NAFLD trial, even though the patient is not started on IP, it is considered related because any procedure involved in the clinical trial, it is considered related. Second one, here it is considered not related because the car came from the wrong side, hit the patient, and I don't think IP had any role in this. Asthma worsening, it didn't give the intended response. It is considered related. Next one, it is considered medical negligence. It has to be stored. It had to be stored between 2 to 8. Changes would have happened and the temperature excursion happened. It is considered related. Depression patient committed suicide. Once again, this has to be considered related. And hospitalization because of the concomitantly administered drug, even though it is not IP, it has to be considered related. All these are as per rule number 41. Ethics committee has to discuss this and enter in the Sugam portal. It will specifically ask whether any clauses of 31 are applicable. This is the flowchart of reporting. It looks very complicated, but dear participants, it is not so complicated. When you involve yourself in clinical trials, as it happens, it looks simple. So let me put it in a simple tabular column. Roles of investigator and ethics committee. Within 24 hours of knowledge of occurrence of the SAE, it is not the patient would have died 1 week before, and probably the investigator came to know today. His time starts from that day, today. Within 24 hours, he has to report to 3 people: sponsor, ethics committee, and DCGI. 30 days after the receiving the report, ethics committee has to give report to the DCGI. It is called due analysis report. And in the Sugam portal, in the drop-down menu, you get the options: 24 hours SAE, 14 days of the event, 30 days of the event, 60 days of the event. But we are sites, we are hospital. So we get, for us, whatever is important is investigator and ethics committee. So 24-hour SAE and 30 days SAE, that is important for us. That 14 days event, sponsor reports to ethics committee, dean and the DCGI. 60 days expert committee to DCGI, and within 120 days of the report, the payment is also made. Now let us go through the formula to determine the quantum of compensation. In case of death, this is the formula: B into F into R divided by 99.37. B is a base amount of 8 lakhs. Government of India has fixed it. F is the age factor based on Workmen Compensation Act. R is a risk factor that takes into account the severity, duration of the disease and comorbidities. It varies between 0.5 to 4. In case the patients, those who have expected mortality at around 90% or more within 30 days, for example, terminally ill cancer patients who are not likely to live beyond 30 days, and the patient dies, the compensation is 2 lakhs, that's it. This formula doesn't apply to them. For others, you apply this formula. This is the table. It starts from 16. Okay, it starts from 16 and ends at 65. Please note the 65 number, that is 99.37. That means if the patient is 65 years or more, then he will get only the base amount, that is 8 lakhs. If the patient is younger, then he'll get more. 16 is multiplied by 228 and divided by 99.37. R is the risk factor. 0.5 is for terminally ill patient, 1 is for patient with high risk, 2 is for patient with moderate risk, and 3 is for patient with mild risk. Healthy volunteers, the factor is 4. I'll give an example for calculation. Just have a look at this. A 40-year-old diabetic who was enrolled into clinical trial with a newer oral anti-diabetic drug dies due to hypersensitivity to the study medication. Calculate the compensation. This is the formula. B is a base amount of 8 lakhs. F is age factor. I've seen for 40 year, it is 184.17. R is a risk factor. See, nothing is given about the stage of diabetes. So I've considered both risk factor 3 as well as 2 to make you understand the difference in the compensation. When you apply this formula, if you consider risk factor as 3, the compensation is around 44 lakhs, 48,000. If you consider the risk factor as 2, then the compensation is around 29 lakhs, 65,000. This is how broadly the compensation can be calculated. If you go the formula wise, minimum compensation is 8 lakhs, that is base amount, and the maximum it can go up to 73.59 lakhs. However, there are instances where the DCGI has ordered 1 crore, 1.3 crore, which means these formula are not ultimate. Finally, it is the discretion of the expert committee and the DCGI in deciding compensation. Compensation for injury other than death should not exceed the quantum of compensation which would have been due for payment in case of death, because loss of life is a maximum injury. In case of compensation for disability, permanent disability, you calculate how much you would have got in case the patient had died, multiply with the percentage disability suffered by the subject. 90% of that. That means if the patient has got 100% disability, he will get 90% of the compensation in case he was dead, and less than 100% disability, the proportion, it will be prorated and proportional to the actual percentage of disability suffered. To give an example, have a look at this. The patient has 50% disability, 45-year-old female patient. If I apply this formula, first we have to calculate how much the patient would have got in case she was dead. So age, B, FR, everything is there. The compensation was 29,000. Now calculate the compensation for 50% disability. If you apply this formula C and D, once again the compensation comes to around 12,28,000. That means 50% of the compensation in case if she was dead. That meant she will get. Compensation for birth defect and congenital anomaly. What can happen in case there is a pregnancy related SAE? There can be stillbirth, there can be early death due to anomaly, there can be no death but deformity which can be fully corrected through appropriate intervention, or there may be permanent disability which is mental or physical. In case of birth defect or congenital anomaly, a lump sum amount to be kept as a fixed deposit that would bring in a monthly interest equivalent to half of the minimum wage of unskilled worker in Delhi. Currently, the unskilled worker in Delhi should get around 695 rupees per day. That's per month. This is I saw yesterday. Or half of the base amount as per the formula for determining the compensation for death. That is, the base amount is 8 lakhs, half of that, that is 4 lakhs. Plus medical care has to be provided as long as required, which will be over and above financial compensation. In case of chronic life-threatening disease or, for example, hospitalization, etc., quantum of compensation would be linked to the number of days of hospitalization. Compensation per day of hospitalization shall be equal to wage loss. And this wage loss is not the actual wages of the patient. Patient cannot say, my wage is some 30 lakhs per month. I was hospitalized for 10 days, so give me 10 lakhs. No. The wage loss per day shall be calculated based on the minimum wage of unskilled worker in Delhi, that is 695. This will not be a large sum. This may be few tens of thousand, maybe something like 20, 30,000. If the prolonged hospitalization may be 15 days, 1 month, it may be a significant amount. Otherwise, this is not a significant amount. The formula is 2 into W into N, wherein W is minimum wage per day of unskilled worker in Delhi, and N is the number of days of hospitalization. And lastly, mention all these things in the ICF. In the informed consent form, there should be a statement describing the financial compensation and the medical management, and the nominee's name has to be entered. Nominee and the relationship with the participant. This is a must in the informed consent form. To address all these issues, it is better to have an SAE subcommittee. Every ethics committee should have an SAE subcommittee and have a budgetary provisions. Budgetary provisions at the institution level has to be there, especially if it is an academic clinical trial. It is going to be really problematic. If it is industry sponsored, the company will take insurance. Without insurance to trial participants, the ethics committee shall not approve any interventional clinical trial. Thank you so much for the opportunity given, and I'd be happy to answer queries if any. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was really a very wonderful explanation to this topic, interesting topic, especially with all the examples which you have given. Have really clarified what should be SAE and when compensation would be required. There are some question and answers. I think some of them were asked even before you had given many of those examples. They relate to SAE. Why, when do you call it an SAE and why, when compensation would be required? One of the question I can take it up. Anonymous name is not given here, but the question is if a patient has undergone screening even before randomization, a patient develops SAE, is compensation still applicable?
Yeah, yes. After the patient signs informed consent form, the patient or he is considered as participant, and once he is a participant, undergoes any SAE, which should be dictated as per the protocol. The protocol should insist that the particular procedure has to be done. Only then. Otherwise, no. Let us say the patient slips and falls and undergoes a fracture and some fat embolism and the patient dies. No. For this, the causality is not related. But if there is any procedure that is mandated by the protocol, patient undergoes that and then dies, it is considered related.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. One more question. Again, when we send the 30-day report to DCGI.
Yeah, ma'am. Next is a hit on the head is not due to the trial.
Yeah,
How it can
those
be
things I
SAE?
think,
Yeah.
okay.
Dear sir, it is considered SAE. The relatedness is different. Finally, we have to report it. Serious adverse event has to be reported. It is a serious adverse event, but it is not related to the medication. I am not eligible for compensation, but it is a serious adverse event. It has to be reported.
Yes, you had already mentioned about
I hope it is
getting
clear.
the okay. Yeah, so I
Please
just
summarize the compensation of clinical trial subjects if left disabled. Yeah, I think the formula is there.
yes, you have answered that, sir.
Patient participated in trial, drives after the trial is over and discharged, got accident due to sedation of the drug used in the trial. Is he eligible for compensation? Yes. Suppose if you can prove that it causes sedation, but at the same time the question is the PI would have instructed the patient not to drive or something like that. Still, if the patient has driven, that means the patient has violated some rules. This is once again every time ethics committee this has to be discussed. This is a matter for discussion. This is to be taken case to case basis. Ideally, you can argue saying that the patient violated because in spite of instruction not to drive, still he went for driving and he suffered with an accident and he had an SC. Once again, it's a matter for debate. Until when
Ashok,
pre-medical, yes, yeah.
Ashok,
Yes,
in
sir.
such
Yes,
cases,
sir.
it is considered to be related because when he has given the instruction to the subject, it may not be in a proper language or proper way. That is why he has gone to the
Correct, sir.
trial.
Correct,
So
sir. So,
blame goes to the principal investigator. Okay,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Until when free medical management is provided for a trial-related injury, till the causality is established. See, ethics committee members are not like, they will come whenever you want and within some 6 hours or 12 hours. Unlikely. They need some time. I assume 24 hours is a basic minimum time for an ethics committee or even the subcommittee to convene and come to a decision whether it is related or not related. So till that time, for example, if the participant has a myocardial infarction and within few hours, some angioplasty is done and some stenting is done, I'm sorry to say that the company has to pay for that, and this leads to a lot of what to say a friction between the sponsor and the investigator, and ethics committee has to intervene and say because sponsor says this is not related, why we should pay. But till the causality is established as related, it is the responsibility of the sponsor. Ethics committee has to put its foot down and say it has to be paid. As per the NDCT 2019, until when must free medical management be provided after a trial-related injury? I think this is answered. Who will pay the compensation in case of academic clinical trials? Yes, sir. This is a $1 million question. And I'm happy to say my university, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, has taken steps in this regard. They are planning to take insurance for academic clinical trials, wherein it can cover the compensation for research-related injury. So I believe institutions and universities has to come out with such proposals of taking a premium for such insurances.
And in such cases, suppose somebody is, for example, PG is doing the research, something wrong happens, then it is the responsibility of the head of the institute to give if there is any injury related injury. And in our case, in AIMS Nagpur, we have allotted at least 25,000, 25 lakhs reserved. If there is any
Oh,
academic
so
trial
nice,
related
sir.
issue, it is very
So
nice.
nice, sir. So
Anybody
nice,
can
sir.
go ahead with that one.
Very nice,
Yes,
sir. Very nice. That is what
ICMR
Central
guidelines
Institutes
also,
and
ICMR guideline also mentions a corpus fund has to be
Yes.
made
yeah.
available at the institute, but somehow I don't think everyone has.
No, ma'am, ICMR guidelines are academic clinical trial guidelines are on the way. Any time it can be released. So let us wait and see what it mentions.
And for funding, during asking for funding also, this can be included as no, sir, that is compensation.
Yeah,
Can be
they will give.
included and fund can be
ICMR says very clearly that if you include that, then they will give. They told very clearly, अगर आप पूछेंगे नहीं तो देंगे कहाँ से?
Yes, true.
Next is when will we send the 30-day report to DCGI? Will the DCGI respond? He may or may not respond, but if you're not sent, definitely he'll respond. You'll get a mail. So please don't deviate from this. It is the responsibility of ethics committee and the investigator to duly report timely manner is a must. Compensation in case of mortality after the trial is over. You mean to say post-trial access? Post-trial access in case the patient dies, it is undertaking is taken wherein the sponsor is not liable for compensation because post-trial access is something that is done on a compassionate ground. If the patient dies during the trial, then only compensation is applicable. After the trial is over, then if the patient dies, then no, compensation is not applicable. In the PhD
Now,
dissertation,
remaining question can be answered in short question.
I think there are,
Yes.
there are quite,
I think
I
they are
think others are also answered, sir. Who will pay in case of academic trials? I
Yes.
think all are answered.
Yes. Thank you, sir. I think that was a
Thank you,
very
ma'am.
interesting talk. Yes.
So now we will go ahead with the next topic. And now I request Dr. Keche sir to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Renuka Munshi madam, for the session. Over to Dr. Keche sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers, Dakle sir, then Kamal sir, Dixit sir, for giving me opportunity for act as a moderator for this particular session. I am highly privileged to introduce Renuka madam. She has the 30 years experience as a principal investigator for regulatory clinical trials and government funded projects. She has more than 100 plus research publications in index journals. She has acted as a chairperson for KDH, PD Hindu Hospital and IITB Ethics Committee and as a member or member secretary of the Institute Ethics Committee. She is a member of two FSSI Expert Committee and NABS Assessor for Ethics Committees. She is a coordinator for pharmacovigilance and multivisual programs at her institute, and she is a speaker for GCP Workshop, Research Methodology Workshop and the Pharmacovigilance Workshop. I invite Madam to deliver talk on the silent features of NDCT 2019.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And at the outset, I too would like to thank the organizers, Dr. Dikshit, Dr. Kamal, and Dr. Dakari for this opportunity. It's a privilege to be part of NAPT, and we learned a lot from this organization. So thank you very much. I will share my slides. Visible?
Yes, visible.
Yes.
In full screen. Yes. Okay. So I've been given the topic to talk on New Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules 2019, or the Gazette notification is 227E. Now, this is important because when you talk regulations, when you talk the law, you need to have the Gazette number with you. And in short, instead of New Drugs and Clinical Trials Rules, we'll be talking NDCT Rules 2019. Now, just a background, the Drugs and Cosmetic Act and rules came out in 1940 and 1945 respectively. Now, important to realize that the Act doesn't get changed easily. The Drugs and Cosmetic Act, you need an entire parliamentary committee, you need all the approvals before it happens, whereas rules can be changed. So even if you see it is NDCT rules, it is not an act. Okay, so now the reason why this all came in, I'm sure you're all aware of the various, if you go online and just look at, put in a Google of the unethical studies done in India, we have a lot of studies that were happening because the regulations were not strict at that point of time. It only became strict when the HPV vaccine deaths took place in 2010, and in 2012, the parliamentary committee insisted, and that's why we got all the regulations in place from 2013. So, 2005 we had Schedule Y, 2013 to 18 we had a lot of office orders and gazette notifications coming, including SAE notification, compensation, etc. But finally, on 19th March 2019, the new drugs and clinical trials rules were published as GSR 227, and that is right now law, where all of us who are doing clinical research, I would say, I've not said just clinical trials, I'd say clinical research is concerned. So it's a very big document. It's 264 page, both Hindi and English. It had 13 chapters, 107 rules. Every line in that is a rule, and we need to remember that. 8 schedules, 8 tables, and Schedule 8 has all the forms that are required for applying for approval and getting approval. Now, just a brief, we have, as I said, so many chapters. Each chapter just telling you what it is. So chapter 1, again, if you see, the rules are mentioned as per the chapter, which is rules 1 and 2, which is basically definitions. Chapter 2 is rules 3 to 5, which is authorities and officers. Now, we always, by force of habit, call it DCGI, but which is Drugs Controller General of India. But now they have removed the G from it, and it's actually DCI. But of course, out of force of habit, we keep saying DCGI anyway. Now, chapter 3 and chapter 4 are important for ethics committees because they talk about the various rules for ethics committees, whether you're looking at clinical trials or bioequivalence and bioanalytical studies. Chapter 5 is relevant for investigators because it talks about the rules that are applicable to doing clinical trials, whether they're BAB studies or new drug studies or investigation new drugs. Chapter 6 talks about compensation, with Dr. Shenoy covered up very well. So I won't go too much into it. Chapter 7, 8, and 9, we really don't look at it much because we are not really involved in it. Of course, bioavailability and bioequivalence studies need to follow this law. Manufacturing of new drugs, which is mainly sponsor related, import of new drugs, and this again sponsor related. Chapter 10, again, import or manufacture of new drugs for sale or for distribution, sponsor related. Chapter 9 talks about import or manufacture of unapproved new drugs for treatment of patients in government hospitals and government medical institutions. And that becomes important to us because this comes under compassionate use. So when we want a particular drug that's not available in India, not approved in India, say for an oncology drug or something which is for a degenerative disorder, government hospitals can apply and get this drug on compassionate basis. Chapter 12 just talks about the amendments of the drugs and cosmetic tools. Basically, now you cannot use the term Schedule Y. Schedule Y is now obsolete. It's been taken off. So sometimes I've heard some people saying Schedule Y. You cannot use the term Schedule Y anymore. It is NDCT 2019. And chapter 13 is more of the miscellaneous payments and taking pre-submission meetings and post-submission meetings, etc. Now, as I said, first chapter was definition. They just tweaked the definitions a little, basically to be on par with the international guidelines, international rules. So previously it was any new drug clinical trial is a systematic study of any new drug. Now it is new drug or investigational new drug. The rest of the wording stays the same. It's just that they have defined it as an IND, and they said that this is any IND, you can do a clinical trial for that. And IND, they have again defined, where previously it just said a new chemical entity. Now they've said new chemical or biological entity or substance that has not been approved for marketing as a drug in any country. NCE, again, they have redefined it, not approved for marketing as a drug and proposed to be developed as a drug for the first time. So they have changed the definition so a little to, it becomes easier for understanding and easier for applications in when you're applying for these approvals for these drugs. Now, new drug, this is important. A new drug can be an active pharmaceutical ingredient or a phytopharmaceutical ingredient. Now, phytopharmaceutical is basically those that have come from alternative systems, herbal drugs, but they have followed the same pathway, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 for a new drug, and they have biomarkers too, which are standardized and part of its application for a phytopharmaceutical drug. Any drug that was previously approved for one indication and now come up with modified or new claims, including indication, route of administration, dosage or dosage form, again becomes a new drug. And of course, we have a fixed drug combinations or FTC, which have been approved previously for certain claims. Now you are proposing it for a new claim, or you are changing again its indication, route of administration, dosage, and dosage form. Now, these three sets of new drugs continue to be new drugs only for 4 years. After 4 years, they are no longer considered as new drugs. Whereas we have modified or sustained release form of a drug or novel drug delivery system, NDDS, that remains a new drug for the life of that drug. It cannot say after 4 years, it remains a new drug throughout its life. Similarly, biologicals, any gene products, RNA-derived products, recombinant insulin, vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, stem cell-derived products, etc., they remain as new drugs for the entire life of those drugs. Now, orphan drugs is another new definition that came up in the NDCT rules, which is a drug intended to treat a condition that affects not more than 5 lakh people in India. Now, this is basically taken from the ICMR, an ICMR study which looked at the rare diseases and found that this is a good denominator to use, and that's why from orphan diseases it's come to orphan drugs. There are no fees that will be charged for if you apply to work to do any studies on these drugs. Accelerated or expedited approval also is given in such conditions. Biggest examples are the drugs for MDR TB and XDR TB. Now, post-trial access, so Dr. Shenoy touched upon. Now, basically, once a study is getting completed, and the investigator finds that this drug is really beneficial to the patient, and he wants to continue the drug till the drug reaches the market, he can request for post-trial access. Similarly, an ethics committee can ask for post-trial access because many times the drugs are so expensive. You look at monoclonal antibodies, the drugs are so expensive that you know that the patient can't afford it after the study is over. So you can insist on post-trial access when you are approving the study as an ethics committee. And mainly, if there is it can be approved because if there is no alternative therapy or the drug is found to be beneficial. But there's a proviso here. The sponsor has no liability. If anything goes wrong when the patient is taking after the study is over and is taking it as post-trial access till the drug is available in the market, sponsor will not pay for any SAE, no medical injury, nothing. And the subject or his heir has to consent in writing that he's agreed for post-trial access. So this is important to remember when we say post-trial access. It is something as a given to a patient who's responding, but the responsibility of the sponsor is taken off from here. Now, biomedical and health research, this is important for especially for PG students because we do all these kind of studies on basic, applied, operational research, clinical research. We are not doing, clinical trials as such, regulatory clinical trials, but this has come in chapter 4, and this has become important because this becomes law now. So we cannot say, oh, we are doing a clinical research study. We are not doing clinical trials. So we are not, it's not, doesn't come under NDCT. It does because NDCT is mentioned biomedical and health research now. So any study that is done, the laws of NDCT are also applicable here. So another terminology is academic clinical trial, again discussed. I think all of you are aware because I saw questions on that. So any trial that is initiated by an investigator, whether it is himself or the research institution for a new indication or new route of administration or new dose or new dosage form, the results of which are only going to be used for academic purposes and not for looking for approval, not for commercial reasons. In that case, this becomes an academic study. So, we have a lot of anesthesia projects where they was first given by a particular route and now they want to change the route, or you have some where you want to just try it out nasal route, or you want to try different blocks using anesthetic drugs. This is important that you consider it as an academic study as long as you're sure that the investigator or the investigator gives an undertaking that he is not going to be using it for any commercial reason. Many times we have where, the investigator requests the company to give this drug free because it's an expensive drug. At that time, the company also has to sign an undertaking saying that the results, it's giving it free and the results will not be used for commercial reasons. It's important, right? So basically, no permission is required if these provisos are taken care of, these conditions are looked at. Solely for academic research, ethics committee permission is required and it will not be used for promotional purposes. in case the ethics committee has a little doubt that the study may have some commercial value, or it may be used commercially later, or it comes under a regulatory study, it's not purely academic. The ethics committee shall inform the regulators on its views within 30 days of receiving this application, and within 30 days the regulators have to respond. Somebody asked about that. Yeah, the regulators do not respond within 30 days, the ethics committee has the right to say yes, go ahead with an academic study, or no. So if there's no response within 30 days, they thankfully put liability also on the regulators. The regulators have to respond within 30 days. Otherwise, that will be the decision of the ethics committee. Now, this I'm not going into detail because I think this has already been covered in the previous topics. Basically, a minimum number of members required for ethics committee looking at clinical trials. You have to have internal and external. You have to have legal, social worker, lay person, etc. Now, I'll just discuss that NDCT talks about that for quorum, 5 members, and the lay person is mandatory, legal is mandatory, social scientist is mandatory. And all these 3 are outsiders. They are not internal members. Well, there's a difference between the ICMR guidelines, which should change, is that they have said that the lay person is preferably part of the quorum, which makes it different. Ideally, lay person should be there in any study because that lay person represents the community. And it's important that he or she reads the consent documents, understand what is written there, and gives his or her opinion on whether you think the study is a high-risk study or low-risk study. Now, of course, this is that the chairperson should not be from the institute, member secretary has to be. And as I said, of course, they asked for 3 members, but at least 1 member should be a non-scientific member. So they had made a rule, and I think that rule is still there, where even if you're a legal member, you cannot be a MBBS and LLB. You either be MBBS or you be LLB. You can't be both. If you are a lay person, you can't be from a science background. So these are the 2 things that have come up where they're talking about the non-scientific people. But for the scientific people, they have said you need 1 PG qualification. You can't take an MBBS person, and that's important to remember that. There has to be somebody in medicine, surgery, pediatrics, etc., etc. They have to follow the rules. They have to undergo regular training. And if you have not undergone regular training, if the ethics committee doesn't do anything about it, the regulators can disqualify that member. So that's important to remember. Now, similar for the BAB studies, I mean, most of the rules are the same. Registration is mandatory for any ethics committee looking at regulatory studies. Of course, it's mandatory also now for those looking at clinical research studies, BHR studies, but you have to make an application, you have to wait for its approval, and if it doesn't come, then you have to ask for why it's not come. And the registration that you receive is valid for 5 years. So ethics committees, once they receive registration, is valid for 5 years, but the renewal at the end of 5 years has to be done 90 days or 3 months before the expiry of the registration, because that's how long the regulators take to renew your registration or ask queries regarding that. Now, ethics committees for biomedical and health research, they go to a different agency, which is the Department of Health Research. So you submit it in a similar form, but you get a different form. Initially, they give provisional registration for 2 years and final registration for 5 years. And they say that this ethics committee has to work on the lines of the ICMR guidelines 2017. So whatever guidelines are laid down there, any clinical research, academic clinical research, non-regulated clinical research has to abide by these guidelines. And this was also discussed last time. If you have ethics committee looking at both academic and regulatory, you have to register that ethics committee with both agencies. You can't stick to only one. But I think NMC also has started asking now that only ECs that are registered with DHR should look at even student dissertation. So that's important. Now, every medical college EC has to be registered with the DHR. Now, chapters 5 and 7 talks about the conduct of the clinical trials and BAB studies, and basically talks about how the application is going. If communication doesn't come, you consider that the permission has been given. And in case of a study being done by an institution or organization that is owned by the central government or state government, partially or wholly, the do not charge any fees for the application. Otherwise, the fees are quite huge. Now, suppose a clinical trial, you're doing a small private hospital or a small center which doesn't have its own ethics committees. You can obtain approval from an ethics committee that's close to, within 50 kilometers is the condition given for regulatory studies, that the ethics committee has to be, because they have to come monitor. The main reason for saying this is that you can't be sitting in Mumbai and looking at a study in Bangalore. You have to be in that same city so that you can go and monitor, for cause or routine monitoring. You can go and do that. And if that ethics committee rejects the study, then this ethics committee has a responsibility of submitting its rejection reasons for the rejection to the licensing authority so that they also are aware of it. So mainly ethics committees have a lot of responsibility. You have to submit your, the approval letters. Sponsors have responsibility that they have to keep giving quarterly reports to the regulators about the status of the studies and how fast they are moving or not moving or whatever. And in case of termination, the information has to go again to the regulators within 30 working days. Now, the validity of permission. So once you get permission for any clinical trial, you can initiate the clinical trial within 2 years, for a BA/BE study within 1 year. So that's a deadline given by the regulators. Now, compensation, I am not going into it because Dr. Sharma has done a really good, he's taken it very well. So, but now for BHS studies, and everybody's talking, what about academic study? We talk ICMR guidelines, and ICMR says that compensation has to be given to any participant when their injury is related to the research. This is applicable to participants in any arms of the research, whether it is intervention or control or standard of care. Now, this is the difference. Many times sites say that, this is standard of care. Why should I give compensation? But ICMR is very clear on its ruling that it should be given to any patient who participates in the clinical trial. And when deliberating on the quantum of compensation, the EC should consider various different aspects like the type of injury, the extent of injury, the loss of wages, etc. The only problem is that, there are no guidelines here. So each EC will decide its own amount. So sometimes it's easy to fall back on what is written in Chapter 6 of compensation of the NDCT rules, because at least you have a ready guideline that tells you, how to calculate the compensation. So although ICMR has said that compensation has to be given, it has not mentioned how much and how to calculate. Now, Chapter 8 and 9, we're not going into it because it's basically manufacturing of new drugs or import of new drugs, which is relevant to the sponsors. Chapter 10 is talking about import or manufacture of new drugs for sale or distribution, which again comes back to the same definition of new drugs kinds. Active pharmaceutical ingredient, which is a new drug not approved earlier, new drug having unapproved molecule, approved as new drug recently in the country, new claims, new indications, a FTC or a phytopharmaceutical. So when you're taking any of these new drugs for sale or distribution, a local clinical trial has to be done. So the drug may have been approved in the US, in the Europe, in Asia, but not in India. You need to do bridging studies, which are called local clinical trials. However, they've made a situation where these local clinical trials may be waived. So they've said that it's already approved in different countries, which are, regulators feel come under Rule 101, where these countries, if the studies are done in this country, like US and Europe, they will give a waiver for local clinical trial, especially if no major unexpected serious adverse events have been seen. If it is recently approved for marketing in another country, and there is no evidence or minimal evidence for pharmacogenetic effects of this drug. So the population, because today we know pharmacogenetics is the big thing. Drugs respond differently based on the genetic makeup of the individual. And so if there are studies that show that there's minimal evidence of any interactions and reactions because of this pharmacogenetic differences, then the drug will be approved. However, the applicant has to do a phase 4 clinical trial to establish safety and efficacy, effectiveness, and the new drug, if the new drug is indicated in life-threatening or serious diseases, or diseases of special relevance to the Indian health scenario, of a rare diseases, or if it is an orphan drug, then that is then the local clinical trial is waived for these drugs, and you can immediately import and use it in such patients. Chapter 11 talks about, which I said was important, because suppose you want to import or manufacture an unapproved new drug for treatment of patients in government or government medical hospital. The medical officer, or basically the head of institution, has to make an application asking for this, and it covers up. So the government does give it. You just have to make sure that you make a proper application. You take consent from the patient for whom you're going to give this and or his next of kin, and the EC has to approve the application. So many times you've seen drugs that are not in India have been provided on compassionate basis based on this. As I said, Schedule Y is redundant and miscellaneous is basically all the other, administrative application rules that they have put in. Now, just 8 schedules, just telling you, giving you a brief run of the various schedules. So first schedule is the general principles and practice for clinical trial. Second schedule talks about, again, the requirements and the guidelines, the provision for accelerated approval process. Basically, within 6 months or less than 6 months, those drugs get approved, as I said, for orphan diseases, rare diseases, unmet medical needs. Third talks exactly of the conduct of clinical trial, and that's important to keep that in mind, because it actually tells you how to do the study, what needs to be done when you're preparing your protocol. Fourth schedule talks about the guidelines and the requirements for BA/BE studies. Fifth schedule talks about post-marketing assessment, whether it's a post-marketing study or a post-marketing surveillance, how to go about it, what to do, etc. Sixth schedule talks about the various fees payable. Seventh talks about the compensation rules to calculate the compensation. Eighth schedule has all the forms, which we'll come to next. Right. Now, the third schedule, as I said, has a lot of tables. It has 8 tables, which basically, if you actually sit down and read this NDCT rules, they've made life very easy for investigators and for ethics committees, and I'm assuming for sponsors, because they put everything down. Previously, if you saw Schedule Y and you look at this and you realize that the world of difference, everything has been informed and put down in black and white. So you just have to pick up that document and put it in, in writing for yourself. Like even what to write in a protocol is mentioned in table 2. Consent form has been given. Investigator undertaking, table 4. And table 5 is basically if it is a SAE, how you report it in India. It's important. Table 6 is how you write a clinical trial report. Table 7 is the investigator brochure. And table 8 is the prescribing information that you will put on your drug pamphlet. So very, very transparent and clear rules have been laid down in the NDCT 2019. These forms, as I said, I'm not going there. Some are modified from the old ones. Many are new. So there are about 27 forms that have come up. For each application, there's a form. So it's, you just have to pick it up, copy it, do it in your own handwriting or in your own on your PC and submit it. And today everything is online. You don't have to physically go sit in Delhi, and push your papers. Everything is online through the SIGAM portal. Just 2 minutes on the amendments that have come post 2019. There are a lot of Gazette notifications that have come out, after that, because they've realized that certain addendums have to be put in. So they have, in August 21, it basically said that certain terminologies have to be changed. Now, Central Licensing Authority is going to be called as Designated Registration Authority. Then on 31st August 21, it said that either clinical trial or both has to be substituted with either clinical part or analytical part or both. So they added the analytical part in that rule. Then in January 22, we had the term stem cell derived product substituted by cell or stem cell derived product. So they realized that they had forgotten about cell based and they've added that. But this is important because on 14th October, this GSR 778 has come up and put a lot of liability on the regulators, because they say that if you submit your application, as I said, you have to submit your application within 90 days of the, before your registration gets over. But if you don't receive anything for 45 days, you can consider that the registration has been, re-registration has been granted, and you just have to submit form CT02A to the regulators. Similarly, same thing, if you have to conduct clinical trials, again, if you receive no communication from them within 90 days, permission to conduct the clinical trial is considered granted. So if the regulators do not respond, they cannot complain later if the ethics committee or the sponsor or the investigator initiates the study. Okay. Similarly, there are other rules for the same, for the other provisos, that if you do not get a response, you can, and of course, you kept it 90 days, giving them 3 months, but you can go ahead and consider that you have received approval. Now, they have added a lot of forms, as I said, Form 02A, Form 06. A lot of forms, basically, as they made the addendum, they realized they needed to add forms for the same. So they've added a lot of forms. Now, what is important is, again, they have in 9th March 2023, they made added a new proviso which said that, as I said, they realized that cell-based assays had been missed out. So they added cell-based assays, organ chips, microphysiological system, all for the in vitro studies that you will do, and of course, animal studies. So they added all that you, when you're applying for a IND, you should have safety and efficacy using either one of these, cell-based or other assays that can be at the day. Now, the last one, of course, is it came out first in, I think, October or September, but it's now coming that from 1st April, September 24. The registration of all CROs is now mandatory for any CRO that looks after regulatory studies. You have to be registered. So if you are doing a regulatory study, the first thing as an investigator, you have to ask that CRO, have you registered with CDSU, and can you show a copy of that registration? So that's important to realize that they are now really making sure that everything is transparent. You can't have these fly-by-night CROs coming up who then disappear after a few months or years. Okay, so have to be registered before conducting any clinical trial or bioavailability or BAB study. And there's a form that the application has to be made in. Okay, so thank you, and I will take questions.
Thank you, madam, for your wonderful deliberation. I'm not seeing any question in the chat box, but NDCT and the summit may have provided a robust regulatory framework as per the European Union or the US FDA. That is, our guidelines are as part of the US and that European Union. And
Yes,
they have defined the new terms, old term in the new form, like orphan drugs or these hostile access that were not previously defined, but that have been defined in the NDC 2019. And they have also defined the timeline, that is, which was not defined previously, but they have given the clear timeline for our regulators or for investigator or the ethics committees. That, madam, I have got one query actually that asked. Madam, is there any change in the process of application or waiver of that clinical trial for the biologicals?
change in the regulations.
Change in the regulation for the
No, sir.
biological,
So far,
that is,
no.
there is no waiver for the clinical trials.
No, they have not said that, sir. Only with those few conditions that they put in, that is it. So if it's for a rare disease or orphan disease, then those are the provisions that they've come up, but not otherwise.
Biological also may get that waiver of that clinical trials.
Yes, that comes under new drugs. Those come under new drugs. They can get, but they have to fulfill those conditions.
Okay.
Yogendra, there are two questions.
Yes, sir.
Madam, one is our ethics committee is registered with the DHR. Can we give the approval to academic clinical trial, or DCGI registration is mandatory?
No, sir. Any academic studies, only DHR registration is required.
Correct. Second question is, in case of academic studies, should the compensation be provided even in case of observational or non-interventional trial?
No.
As it is non-interventional or
No,
observational.
nothing. So, but at our site, what happens is basically we have a lot of anesthetists. Sometimes they're trying new routes. They say it's academics, and they're trying new route or new, some new way of administering it or something, a new claim, like certainly nasal route is better than oral and all that. So that time we take an undertaking from them that in case there's any research-related injury, you have to pay for it. We don't ask for insurance, but we take an undertaking saying we will, if in case any patient complains or there is any serious adverse event, you will have to pay for it. So, I mean, there was a lot of issues first, but now they've accepted it and they do, give us an undertaking in that case, because we have to ultimately protect the patient as an ethics committee.
So if there are no questions, we can go ahead with the end of the session. So I am
Thank
very thankful to both the speakers, Dr. Shinoy sir as well as Dr. Renuka madam, for their excellent presentation, as well as moderator Dr. Jayanti madam and Dr. Keche sir for their nice moderation. Lastly, my sincere thanks to all participants for their active participation throughout the workshop. My special thanks goes to Dr. Kamal sir, who was instrumental for success of this workshop. Sir has put their wholeheartedly efforts for this workshop and played a very crucial role for successful of this workshop since the inception of this workshop. So please give a big round of applause for the Kamal sir. My sincere thanks also goes to Dr. Malhotra sir, who acted as a coordinator as well as chairperson of the workshop. Lastly, certificate will be given to our participants very shortly through their respective email. So once again, thank you all to make this online workshop grand success and memorable one. So with this, I declare that this workshop of 4 session is over. Thank you once again to all moderators as well as the faculty members. Thank you all.
you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.